He was like a god walking amongst mere mortals. He had a voice that could make a wolverine purr, and suits so fine they made Sinatra look like a hobo.
The man is the leader of the free world. He's brilliant, he's funny, he's an above-average dancer.
That I don't pledge allegiance to the flag, scurrilous stuff. And I want to make sure that your viewers understand that I am a Christian who has belonged to the same church for almost 20 years now. It's where Michelle and I got married. It's where our kids were dedicated. I took my oath of office on our family Bible. I lead the Pledge of Allegiance when I open up the Senate. I've been saying the Pledge of Allegiance since I was 3 years old. And I think it's very important for people not to buy into the kinds of dirty tricks that we become so accustomed to in our politics. And people need to understand so that,
You are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith, and you're absolutely right that that has not come my Christian faith.
As the Holy Quran tells us, the Holy Quran teaches that, the Holy Quran tells us, and the Holy Quran also says...
People need to understand so that, I'm unequivocal about this. I have not and never have been of the Muslim faith.
We are no longer a Christian nation.
We do not consider ourselves a Christian nation.
The United States has been enriched by Muslim Americans. Since our founding, American Muslims have enriched the United States. Islam has always been a part of America's story.
Which passages of Scripture should guide our public policy? Should we go with Leviticus, which suggests slavery is okay, and that eating shellfish is an abomination? Or we could go with Deuteronomy, which suggests stoning your child if he strays from the faith? Or should we just stick to the Sermon on the Mount, a passage that is so radical that it's doubtful that our own Defense Department would survive its application? So before we get carried away, let's read our Bibles now. Folks haven't been reading their Bible. Which brings me to my second point.
Let there be no doubt, Islam is a part of America.
Or should we just stick to the Sermon on the Mount, a passage that is so radical that it's doubtful that our own Defense Department would survive its application?
Matthew 5. When he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven.
Or we could go with Deuteronomy, which suggests stoning your child if he strays from the faith.
Deuteronomy 5. Moses summoned all Israel and said, Hear, O Israel, the decrees and laws I declare in your hearing today. Learn them, and be sure to follow them. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not set your desire on your neighbor's house or land, his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. These are the commands the Lord proclaimed in a loud voice to your whole assembly there, on the mountain, from out of the fire, the cloud, and the deep darkness. And he added nothing more.
Should we go with Leviticus, which suggests slavery is okay, and that eating shellfish is an abomination?
Leviticus 20. If a man has sexual relations with an animal, he must be put to death, and you must kill the animal. If a woman approaches an animal to have sexual relations with it, kill both the woman and the animal. They must be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads. If a man marries his sister, the daughter of either his father or his mother, and they have sexual relations, it is a disgrace. They must be cut off before the eyes of their people.
Where's your co-ran now?
As the Holy Quran tells us,
يسألونك عن الأنفال قل الأنفال لله والرسول.
the Holy Quran teaches that
إنما المؤمنون الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم وإذا تليت عليهم آياته زادتهم إيمانا وإذا تليت عليهم
and the Holy Quran also says,
O Lord, bless this thy hand grenade, that with it thou mayst blow thine enemies to tiny bits in thy mercy.
يسألونك عن الأنفال قل الأنفال لله والرسول.
Islam is not part of the problem in combating violent extremism. It is an important part of promoting peace.
And I want to make sure that your viewers understand that I am a Christian who has belonged to the same church for almost 20 years now. It's where Michelle and I got married. It's where our kids were dedicated.
Shut up! Shut enough! Listen,
do you know liberation theology, sir? Do you know liberation theology?
I actually studied. I studied theology. I went to a seminary, and I studied Latin.
No,
I could go.
I said, do you know black liberation theology?
I'm very aware of what you're calling black liberation, but let me get my question out.
No, I didn't ask you what I'm calling. I said, do you know black theology?
Reverend, I'm going to give you a chance to.
In his first sermon after September 11th, 2001, Reverend Wright said the U.S. had brought on the attacks with its own terrorism.
We bombed Hiroshima, we bombed Nagasaki, and we nuked far more than the thousands in New York and the Pentagon, and we never batted an eye. We have supported state terrorism against the Palestinians and black South Africans, and now we are indignant because the stuff we have done overseas is now brought right back into our own front yards. America's chickens coming home to roost.
And then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human.
It's not known if Senator Obama was in the church on this day, but he has sought to play down Reverend Wright's overall approach.
I don't think that my church is actually particularly controversial.
Wonderful man, that Reverend Wright.
Right, and who was my pastor, and he is a wonderful man. And I think that's an example of is also discovering sort of my own faith, which is not necessarily a traditional faith. I don't come out of an institutionalized religious setting, but what becomes important to me is the sense of liberation that is embodied in the historically African American church.
And extreme views or whatever views against the government or against certain politicians, and that's what you just played to me.
So the story is that he's standing in protest, refusing to say the Pledge of Allegiance, refusing to put the hand over the heart. The real story is that they're playing the national anthem, and he doesn't have his hand over his heart. Yeah. Let's listen to Obama's reaction to that.
That email has been completely misidentified. This was the Star-Spangled Banner. It was not the Pledge of Allegiance. There's only so much that you can do around this kind of misinformation.
He's a lawyer, an attorney at law, an officer of the court. Yes, but what kind of lawyer?
Well, I know those law books mean a lot to you, but not out here. Out here, a man settles his own problems.
There was a lawyer once. His name was Francis Scott Key. He penned a song that I'm sure you're aware of. You've seen it. It's in most hymnals throughout our churches. It's called the National Anthem. It is our song as an American. We go, however, to a ball game. We stand in our church services and we sing the words of that song, and they float over our minds and our lips, and we don't even realize what we're singing. Most of us have memorized it as a child, but we've never really thought about what it means. Let me tell you a story. Francis Scott Key was a lawyer in Baltimore. The colonies were engaged in vicious conflict with the mother country, Britain. Because of this conflict and the protractedness of it, they had accumulated prisoners on both sides. The American colonies had prisoners and the British had prisoners. And the American government initiated a move. They went to the British and they said, let us negotiate for the release of these prisoners. They said, we want to send a man out to discuss this with you. They were holding the American prisoners in boats about 1,000 yards offshore. And they said, we want to send a man by the name of Francis Scott Key. He will come out and negotiate to see if we can make a mutual exchange. On the appointed day, in a rowboat, he went out to this boat and he negotiated with the British officials. And they reached a conclusion that men could be exchanged on a one-for-one basis. Francis Scott Key, jubilant with the fact that he'd been successful, went down below in the boats, and what he found was a cargo hold full of humanity, men. And he said, men, I've got news for you tonight. You're free. He said, tonight I have negotiated successfully your return to the colonies. He said, you'll be taken out of this boat, out of this filth, out of your chains. As he went back up on board to arrange for their passage to the shore, the admiral came and he said, we have a slight problem. He said, we will still honor our commitment to release these men, but it'll be merely academic after tonight. It won't matter. And Francis Scott Key said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mr. Key, he said, tonight we have laid an ultimatum upon the colonies. Your people will either capitulate and lay down the colors of that flag that you think so much of, or you see that fort right over there, Fort Henry? He said, we're going to remove it from the face of the earth. He said, how are you going to do that? He said, if you will, scan the horizon of the sea. And as he looked, he could see hundreds of little dots. And he said, that's the entire British war fleet. He said, all of the gunpowder, all of the armament is being called upon to demolish that fort. It will be here within striking distance in a matter of about 2.5 hours. He said, the war is over. These men would be free anyway. He said, you can't shell that fort. He said, that's a large fort. He said, it's full of women and children. He says, it's predominantly not a military fort. He said, don't worry about it. They said, we've left them a way out. And he said, what's that? He said, do you see that flag way up on the rampart? He said, we have told them that if they will lower that flag, the shelling will stop immediately. And we'll know that they've surrendered, and you'll now be under British rule. Francis Scott Key went down below and told the men what was about to happen. And they said, how many ships? He said, hundreds. The ships got closer. Francis Scott Key went back up on top and he said, men, I'll shout down to you what's going on as we watch. As twilight began to fall, and as the haze hung over the ocean as it does at sunset, suddenly the British war fleet unleashed. He says the sound was deafening. There were so many guns that there were no reliefs. He said it was absolutely impossible to talk or hear. He said suddenly the sky, although dark, was suddenly lit. And he says from down below, all he could hear the men, the prisoners, saying was, "Tell us where the flag is. What have they done with the flag? Is the flag still flying over the rampart? Tell us." 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the shelling, every time the bomb would explode and it would be close to the flag, they could see the flag in the illuminated red glare of that bomb, and Francis Scott Key would report down to the men below, "It's still up. It's not down." The admiral came and he said, "Your people are insane." He said, "What's the matter with them?" He said, "Don't they understand this is an impossible situation?" Francis Scott Key said he remembered what George Washington had said. He said, "The thing that sets the American Christian apart from all other people in the world is he will die on his feet before he'll live on his knees." The admiral said, "We have now instructed all of the guns to focus on the rampart to take that flag down." He said, "We don't understand something. Our reconnaissance tells us that that flag has been hit directly again and again and again, and yet it's still flying. We don't understand that." But he said, "Now we're about to bring every gun for the next 3 hours to bear on that point." Francis Scott Key said the barrage was unmerciful. All that he could hear was the men down below praying. The prayer, "God, keep that flag flying where we last saw it." Sunrise came. He said there was a heavy mist hanging over the land, but the rampart was tall enough. There stood the flag, completely nondescript, in shreds. The flagpole itself was at a crazy angle, but the flag was still at the top. Francis Scott Key went aboard and immediately went into Fort Henry to see what had happened. And what he'd found had happened was that that flagpole and that flag had suffered repetitious direct hits. And when hit had fallen, but men, fathers, who knew what it meant for that flag to be on the ground, although knowing that all of the British guns were trained on it, walked over and held it up humanly until they died. Their bodies were removed and others took their place. Francis Scott Key said what held that flagpole in place at that unusual angle were patriots' bodies. He penned the song, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Or the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet fly and wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? The debt was demanded. The price, it was paid."
You, Mr. Arab.
That Islam has always been a part of America's story. The first nation to recognize my country was Morocco. In signing the Treaty of Tripoli in 1796, our second president, John Adams, wrote, "The United States has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Muslims.
This looks like the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
We have to nuke them. We have to nuke them now.
Somebody's got to pay.
Pay for what? I don't know. Just pay. Now stop whining and just take it like a man.
Gee, I'm real sorry your mom blew up, Ricky.
Like the nerve of them guys.
7 chipmunks twirling on a branch, eating lots of sunflowers on my uncle's ranch. You know that old children's tale from the sea?
Pay attention, boy. Now, when I come at him with a crowbar, you spread the bear trap, then I'll pull the pin out of a hand grenade, and you pin him down with mortar fire.
A freelance writer on historical subjects. His historical subject tonight, Thomas Jefferson and Islamic fundamentalism.
When word reached Monticello in the summer of 1801 that the U.S. consulate in Libya had been sacked by a mob, that the consul, his wife and baby girl had to flee for their lives to the safety of the Danish embassy, where they hid for 10 days until smuggled from the city, President Thomas Jefferson was not surprised. For 17 years he had been the country's leading hawk for war against militant Islam. Is that surprising, that this gentle deist philosopher, supposed pacifist, the father of American liberalism, was so bellicose? Since 1784, hijacking and hostage-taking by the Muslimen, as Muslims were then called, had plagued the country, while he, John Adams, and Ben Franklin had been the first American diplomats to negotiate for hostages. There were 14 the day he became Secretary of State in 1790, more than 100 when he stepped down in 1793. By the time he entered the White House, scores of Americans had died in hellish slavery, and the government had spent millions on ransom, tribute, and building a navy to meet the menace. The conservative Federalists had followed European-style diplomacy in the Mediterranean, submitting to the kidnappers' demands. But Jefferson was adamant. What galled him was not only the presence of cash, gold, silver, jewelry, but the arms shipments that completed the blackmail. His word. Cannon, tar, pitch, shot, whole warships. Our first military assistance program overseas. Worse, the kidnappers weren't even real pirates, but Islamic fundamentalists who justified their terrors by their faith. For Barbary pirates was a colloquial and misleading term. Europeans called them that because they preyed exclusively on unarmed merchant ships. But in their own eyes, they were soldiers of the jihad, mujahideen. Unlike the freebooting buccaneers of the Spanish Main, these pirates were, simply, the official navies of 4 sovereign powers carrying out state policy. It was religious, state-sponsored piracy, sanctioned by the jihad. In Barbary days, one man's pirate was another man's mujahid. In 1786, in a hotel room in London, Jefferson and Adams held a secret session with a Libyan ambassador who demanded $100,000 not to begin taking hostages. Sheikh Abdurrahman explained the jihad to them, declared it was his sacred duty to make war on sinners, and that he did not recognize the rules of war against kidnapping civilians because these were written by non-believers. So, on his mountaintop in the summer of 1801, Thomas Jefferson was not surprised. And he had his war. It lasted the 4 years of his first term. One hero was John Rogers. Another commanded the battle schooner USS Enterprise. Lieutenant Stephen Decatur, Jr., after whom 20 American towns and counties would be named. It climaxed with an invasion to the shores of Tripoli, which was, in effect, a successful hostage rescue mission, one of whose heroes was Marine Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon. When the war ended, Congress investigated, justified the president, and, quote, roundly condemned now and for all time the payment of tribute by the United States of America for any reason to any foreign potentate. We look back at the founders, at their powdered wigs and buckled shoes, and say we are not them. We've changed. We've progressed. Maybe. But can we say the same of others? In 1979, the Ayatollah Khomeini did not recognize the inviolability of embassies and other laws he had no hand in writing. In 1983, the destroyer USS John Rogers patrolled the coast of Lebanon, while the Islamic Jihad killed 241 Marines. In 1986, Navy jets pounded Tripoli as the aircraft carrier Enterprise steamed for Libya. In the winter of 1987, the USS O'Bannon cruised the Persian Gulf as dozens of foreigners were prisoners of the Party of God. And this summer, Congress investigates the paying of ransom for Americans held hostage by Islamic Jihad.
Muslims in their families or have lived in a Muslim-majority country. I know because I am one of them. But my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn.
We're looking for a few good men with a medal to be Marines.
I'm standing next to the United States frigate Constitution. She was launched in 1797 from the yard of Edmund Hart here in Boston. She fought the French in the Quasi-War. She fought the Barbary corsairs in the Mediterranean.
And when the first Muslim American was recently elected to Congress, he took the oath to defend our Constitution using the same Holy Quran that one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, kept in his personal library.
This boy's more mixed up than a feather in a whirlwind.
Signed into law, a billion-dollar program to change the hearts and minds of Taliban fighters through local projects and jobs. The goal, says the bill's author, is to get pro-Taliban fighters,
instead of fighting us, to join with us by putting them on a payroll to give those few dollars to tens of thousands of lower-level local Taliban people.
Talk about pink slips. We just found out the unemployment rate jumped to a 16-year high. And President-elect Obama says that's all the more reason to spend hundreds of billions on stimulus and create hundreds of thousands of government jobs. But will more public workers be good or bad for the job market?
He did bow to the Muslim king while he did not do it to the British Queen of England. And by bowing, he showed the world that I am subservient. I do bow down to you as a Muslim king, something no other president has done with Saudi Arabia. The Saudi king is his peer. He is not his subordinate in order to bow for him. And this is exactly what Obama did. Usually it is out of respect that someone would nod his head when bowing to royalty, and the ladies will give curtsy. But Obama went beyond what is required as a head of state and bowed to the Saudi king, and that's unacceptable. It sent the wrong symbol.
When you say it sends the wrong signal, what signal do you think it sends?
It sent a message that Islam is superior to any other master or king or president in the world, that an American president bound to a Muslim king. It also sent a message that terrorism and jihadism is giving Islam the respect it should have on the world stage, to the point that it made an American president, for the first time in history, bow to a Muslim king.
But surely you can question my policies without questioning my faith, or for that matter, my citizenship.
To every corner of the United States. I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go. One left to go. Alaska and Hawaii I was not allowed to go to.
From the bomb that fell on Pearl Harbor to
Barack has led by example. When we took our trip to Africa and visited his home country in Kenya.
Yeah.
quick question. President-elect Obama's birthplace over in Kenya, is that going to be a national spot to go visit where he was born?
It's already an attraction.
Okay.
His paternal grandmother is still alive, and
but his birthplace, they'll put up a marker there.
It will depend on the government. It's already well known.
انتخابات أمريكية طلع مواطن أسود أصله من كينيا أفريقي ومسلم وكان يدرس في مدرسة إسلامية في إندونيسيا اسمه أوباما والناس كلهم صفقوا لهذه الشخصية في الوطن العربي وفي العالم الإسلامي وفي أفريقيا واستبشروا بخير وصفقوا له وصلوا من أجله ودعوا له بالنجاح وربما يكونوا قد دخلوا حتى في حملات التبرع الشرعية لتمكينه من الفوز.
Where the Taliban has been gaining strength and Osama bin Laden is still at large.
I think that was Osama bin Laden.
Also, what did Barack Obama say, and why is it causing controversy? Well, we'll take...
John Kerry says he believes Obama is the right person for the job.
At first, they said it was no big deal, but now we know the truth about Osama bin Laden. Barack Obama's scare.
We had a recording come out of the Obama headquarters. Not Obama, I'm sorry.
Man,
Bin Laden.
I know what you mean.
Bin Laden.
Including Osama, not Obama.
Why don't we just ask Osama bin Laden, Osama Obama what is, since he won by such a big amount.
That's special report for this time.
Now, just a minute, von Schmam de Hessen. This happens to be me native soil, and I like it. In fact, I love it. And no Hessian oppression is gonna put me off in it. Now just try and take it.
And the president outlined his vision of a new world order in which the U.S. would participate fully. One rooted on 4 basic principles.
Non-proliferation and disarmament, the promotion of peace and security, the preservation of our planet, and a global economy that advances opportunity for all people. The time has come for the world to move in a new direction. We must embrace a new era of engagement based on mutual interest and mutual respect, and our work must begin now.
Let me tell you something. I'm not buying it. You might have them fooled. You might have the kids fooled. Not me. Can't get past me. There's a storm coming, buddy. There's a storm coming.
Hey, it's me, America. Step into my office.
Why?
Because you're fucking fired.
Go! You're done! Finished! That's it! Goodbye!
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
I'll see you. No, that'll be all. Just be sure to lock the door behind you on your way out. Good night.